Is there any other additional language that you wanted to include?
Well, just to go back to the first thing that kind of caught my eye, it didn't bother me, but it caught my eye when I was reading on page 3, 4D again. Could we say something like, is not personally required to hold a tag for the big game animal, but may attach the tag pursuant to the next page section? There's another section on how they can attach the tag later.
So just to clarify the point, just put in personally.
Is not personally required to hold a tag for the big game mammal, but may attach pursuant to, because there's another section that will come later about attaching the tag. Oh, about attaching the tag for the person with the special permit or tag.
Yeah, that's an easy addition. I don't see a problem with that interpretation-wise.
And then the only other language change that I had thought is not putting any sort of limit on it. I can't specifically find where it limits it to 1. Maybe it's just in the definition, but I think
He said that they had left that open and that they were going to fill that in whatever our decision was. I believe, is that correct?
Yep. As it currently is written, it's 1 assistant. So if you guys want to leave it open to multiple assistants and just leave it undefined, that's perfectly doable.
Okay. I think we've covered that. So we'll close item number 16. Move on to item number 17.
Thank you.
Commission General Regulation 471, closure of Truckee River to motorized vessels. LCB file number R139-16. Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed, workshop public comment allowed. The commission will hold a workshop to consider amending Chapter 488 of the Nevada Administrative Code. Existing regulation sets forth certain bodies of water on which only vessels without motors are allowed and certain bodies of water on which vessels without motors and vessels powered by electric motors are not allowed. This regulation adds the Truckee River from the California-Nevada state line to the point where the river enters the Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation to the list of waters with such a restriction. This regulation also extends the exception to the restrictions to all such specified waters and to any vessel that is owned, operated, and used for official purposes by a federal, state, or local government entity, or any vessel operating pursuant to a permit for a marine event that is requested by a federal, state, or local government entity. Chief Game Warden Turnipseed.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission. Again, Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed. So as you can see, this regulation is short and sweet. Essentially what it boils down to is we have an NAC that specifies bodies of water on which you can only use a vessel either with no motors or in the second section only with electric motors. But some of the backstory on how we got here, several people have asked, why do we need this regulation? You can't drive a motorboat up the Truckee River on most years anyway. So a little bit of the backstory, last spring, probably April or May, I don't recall exactly when, all of a sudden our phone started ringing off the hook at the Reno office and said, hey, there's a guy running a hovercraft up and down the river. Hovercraft like an air fan hovercraft that levitates off the water basically and runs up and down. We said, well, no, we don't specifically have a regulation against that. So a lot of people in Reno were a little bit up in arms about that, thought that it conflicted with other users of the river, noise, rafters, kayakers, fishermen, all that sort of stuff. So the city of Reno started looking at passing a city ordinance against it. We pointed out the fact that statute says that cities or local governments can pass boating law, but it has to mirror state boating law, essentially stating that this body is the only body in the state that can make new boating law. So, but we said we have an NAC that deals with it. It would be a very simple one-line change. Would you like to request the commission make that change? City of Reno met. I think it was their Planning and Recreation Committee met. I went and spoke with them about what boating laws are in place that don't really apply and what this regulation change would take to add the Truckee to the list of non-motorized vessel waters. Explained that part. The owner of the hovercraft company also came and made his pitch. He's interested in opening up a rental company to rent these hovercraft out to renters who would then be able to run the hovercraft up and down the river. That scared the Planning and Recreation Committee quite a bit. They took it to their parent body, the Reno City Council, and they took a vote to say, yes, please, Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners, please address this in regulation change to add the Truckee River to the list of waters that don't allow motorized vessels. In doing so, we said, okay, well, obviously the Truckee flows through more than just the city of Reno, so we made a couple phone calls to City of Sparks and Washoe County. They both agreed, said, yeah, we think that hovercraft running up and down the river would conflict with other users, so please put us in the list of people who would like this regulation change. So here we are. It's a simple regulation. All it basically, you can see there, 488, 470 lists bodies of water that don't allow a motorized vessel. Those include Angel Lake, Blue Lake, Marlette Lake, and then a one-line change that adds the Truckee River from the California state line to the Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation. While we were at it, we thought this might be a good time to do some housekeeping and add in some stuff there at the lower sections, basically just exemptions for governmental entities that are doing search and rescues. You know, if there's a potential drowning victim on the Truckee or Reno Fire Department or Sparks Fire Department just called the other day, Washoe County, I guess, asking about doing a training exercise at Sparks Marina. You know, thought it might be appropriate to put an exemption in there for, you know, fire departments, public safety agencies that may be doing search and rescues or training stuff on these bodies of water.
Any questions for Chief Turnipseed? Commissioner Drew.
So both Washoe County and Sparks were supportive, Tyler, you said?
Yes, we have a letter in your support material from City of Reno, and we don't have the same document from Sparks or Washoe, but they told us, Deputy Director Rob made contact with some of their representatives, and they said, yeah, add us to the list of being in support of this regulation change.
And I assume there's not a big use of any other, you know, like electronic trolling motors on the lower Truckee or anything like that that we're missing that you're aware of?
Not that we've seen a great deal of. I asked some of the local Reno wardens if they ever see people, you know, using a trolling motor in a boat or something. They couldn't think of any specific instances. We considered just putting it in the electric motors part, but the same hovercraft rental operator or wanting to become rental operator said he's looking at building or buying an electric one.
Do we anticipate said operator moving to like Sparks Marina or Virginia Lake or?
Potentially. Of course, I can't speak for him. I actually expected him to be here to give his testimony, but I don't see him here. I did hear word of mouth that he's now looking at Washoe Lake State Park for his possible business.
Vice Chairman Johnson.
Yeah, I hate to open this can of worms. This hovercraft operator isn't going to take the position that his hovercraft is not on the water. I throw it out there because you get people arguing these things about my hovercraft's not really on the water, and this regulation says on the water. So I just throw that out there.
It is when you take off and you stop, though, Brad.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
you bet, Vice Chairman Johnston. I hadn't thought of that question. I suppose it is a valid question. He did say that when it's going up the river or down the river, it drafts about 3 to 5 inches of water. So it is touching
It's on the water. Okay.
Yeah, the air curtain is partially submerged.
That answers that then.
It's a good question, though.
Further questions or comments from the commission? Public comment in Elko? Public comment in Reno?
No comment in Reno, Mr. Chairman.
And public comment in Las Vegas? Come on up, Mike. Hey, Mike, is this for public comment or for item 17? Public comment. We're not quite there yet.
I'm sorry. I'm just ready for this public comment.
All right, so public comment on item 17 in Las Vegas. Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for final comments. Hearing none, we'll close item 17. Thank you, Chief Turnipseed. Now we'll move on to item 18, public comment period. Persons wishing to speak are requested to complete a speaker's card and present it to the recording secretary. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on the future commission agenda. Public comment on Elko. Public comment in Reno.
Yes, for the record, Fred Holtz. Memorialized in the last commission meeting's minutes was a resolve to address wildlife killing contests. Unfortunately, there was no agendized item for this meeting's consideration. Having people who attempt to indiscriminately shoot mass numbers of coyotes in a contest setting does not meet the tenets of the North American model. It's been a full year since the first of 2 petitions to the commission addressing the wanton waste of public wildlife was submitted. Commission action towards implementing an enforceable, meaningful regulation is overdue and needs to be agendized for the next commission meeting. To allay the groundless fears of hunters that this regulation would somehow diminish their ability to kill wildlife, the regulation can specifically focus on coyote killing contests, the only species which are the subject of wildlife killing contests in recent history. If the commission can accommodate the needs of a handful of severely disabled hunters through a formal regulation, then a much more dangerous and impactful situation where large numbers of unbridled hunters killing large numbers of coyotes deserves regulatory oversight as well. We need a commission general regulation on this subject as soon as possible, not a big policy. Thank you.
Further public comment in Reno.
No more comment in Reno, Mr. Chairman.
Public comment in Las Vegas.
Mr. Chair, Commission, Jana Wright for the record. What I'm asking is for the Commission to consider requesting the department to give an update on the Wildlife Values Survey. At the March Commission meeting, it was stated that raw data would be provided in June of 2016. I don't know if that's to the consultant doing the study or to the department. I'm interested in what were the Nevada-specific questions that were added to the survey, perhaps even what were the questions of the survey if they were identical to the 2004 survey. I'm also interested in how the survey participants were chosen. So if the board would take that under consideration, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
For the record, Mike Reese, speaking on behalf of myself. This is in asking for a public retraction from Commissioner Young. Last meeting when he stated that I personally had sent a letter to the governor asking for resignation. Letter never went, never even thought to be written, no phone call or nothing. What he may have been referring to is what I put in you guys' hands is a letter that went to our coalition. A lot of people asked what did Commissioner Young say at a meeting. I recapped this and I put it in, and for the people that in Reno and Elko and here, I'm going to read this real quick. This went out to our board of of Southern Nevada Coalition members, to all. Some of you have asked what Commissioner Bill Young said during the member comment period about guns and gun control. The video has now been posted to the NDOW website, and we have given you the link so you can decide for yourself if Bill Young speaks for you or not. To preface this video, he is reacting to some emails he has received from individuals and organizations. While it's true that he has not attended any CAB meetings in the past 2 years and has missed some state meetings or come in late or even left early, the coalition has not sent him any letters yet asking for better representation for Nevada sportsmen and women. However, we know that most sportsmen and gun owners are opposed to Bloomberg's coming to town with his money and trying to, again, put undue burden on responsible gun owners and acting as if there's no background checks in place. In his rant, he talks about the governor vetoing the bill, and the reason for the governor vetoing it is because it made it extremely hard to loan a gun to a friend, a relative, or even store your guns at a person's house while you're on vacation. The Nevada Firearms Coalition is opposed to ballot initiative number 1 and is urging all sportsmen and gun owners to vote no while Commissioner Young sits on the board of the Gun Control Advocates. For more information on this bill, please contact the president of the Firearms Coalition at dawn@nvfac.org. Please feel free to send this to your organizations, friends, or coworkers to help them decide how they want to vote on the initiative. Thanks, Mike. Nowhere in this did I ever ask for a resignation or ever insinuate a resignation, and that still stands today. Thank you.
Next public comment in Las Vegas.
For the record, Mike Macbeth. I would like to talk about an issue I know that you guys enjoy hearing, and that is the issue of trail cameras. I, in the past, have, in the time that the commission dealt with this issue, had always been on the fence. My personal ethics did not let me use, I made the decision I did not want to use trail cameras. But I always felt that it wasn't my place to ever judge other person's ethics, that that was something that they had to decide for themselves. However, what I have seen this summer is disturbing, and I now feel I am no longer on the fence, and I think that that the commission should seriously consider regulating trail cameras. What we witnessed in K Valley was an all-out assault on every single spring by individuals that we believe were associated with a large out-of-state outfitter. These cameras were on every single spring. The individuals were not hunting. They were checking these cameras at all times. They disturbed archery hunters that were in their blinds on springs. They were checking their cameras at night and disturbing the animals that, as we know, a lot of animals come into water. They're nocturnal and they come into water late. And the impetus seems to be that if there is a 400 class bull elk, that they have free rein to disrupt everybody else, especially hunters who have drawn tags and have a legitimate right to be hunting, without being disrupted by individuals that are using technology to track animals so they can get a finder's fee, to kill, to have a large animal killed. And it's just very bothersome that, a person, I have a very good friend who drew a PIW elk tag and was hunting this archery season, and the amount of disruption that he, endured was just uncalled for. And so now I'm off the fence. I believe that what the commission should seriously consider is treating trail cameras, this technology, just like we treat aircraft and drones, and that these things be allowed before the season, but that once the season starts or a week before the season, that these trail cameras be removed, and the disruption that occurs then stops and everybody's on the same footing. So, I would hope, I don't know where the commission is on this issue. I don't know when the last time you considered it, but I would hope that that you take another look at this. There is another thing. I almost hate to mention this one because
I hate to interrupt you, Mike, but you're 3 minutes.
Oh, I am? Okay. Thank you.
Come on up.
Hi, Stephanie Myers, Las Vegas. I'd like to echo what Jana Wright had to say. If there is a human dimension study either currently being worked on or planned, I think the public should know about it, and I think that there are two very important parts of that study that should be included. One, that it's the public, the real public, including the non-consumptive public, who is studied and asked these questions, unlike the license simplification study, where only hunters were requested for their opinion. I think that it needs to be all of Nevadans, not just the wildlife hunters and fishermen. Also, I'd like to ask that such a study would include 3 specific things, asking the public their perceptions about wildlife trapping, about coyote killing contests, and about the bear hunt. Very specifically, those 3 areas, I think it would benefit the commission in your future decision-making to know how the public feels about those 3 specific areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any further public comment?
For the record, Paul Dixon speaking on behalf of myself, a resident of Las Vegas. When I started, Paul Dixon speaking on behalf of myself, Clark County. When I started attending as a CAB member and then became CAB chairman and started coming to these meetings, we have over the last 9 years plus, it's been a long time I've been doing this, occasionally brought up and looked at the issue of wild horses and management and their impact on the range. And we have not had an update of that with this commission. I think we have several new commissioners that are in. And I think it's time that we look at that. I mean, I know that where Tom comes from and John, both of those places, wild horses impact the landscape around there pretty dramatically in certain areas. And I'd like to get their opinions, and I'd like to know whether or not we're still having, even though we're kind of coming out of the drought or in between the drought, whether or not wild horses are still having the impact on the wildlife that they were having several years ago when we were major drought on certain landscapes. And I know that we are not doing the roundups or collecting off. Every plan that I see from BLM is a 10-year plan, and that's all contingent on money. And I just wonder if we have any legs. I mean, we talked a lot about stuff, but what I've seen in other states, the only way they've ever gotten legs from a commission or other levels is they end up having to sue to basically do a lawsuit to basically get things to move. And I don't know if we have to go that far, but I haven't seen any control of horses. I've seen their populations grow. I'm not so much concerned, I'm not anti-horse, but I look at the animals suffering. I mean, I look at the animals they took off the Spring Mountains here in southern Nevada. Majority of them are emaciated or almost, starving to death. And I look at other places, and for animal welfare alone, we should be doing something as a wildlife commission. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Further public comment in Reno? Hearing none, I'll close item 18, and we will be back here tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.